Okay, when you first log into Burlington English, you'll see a lot of different tiles. In the training tile, they have pre-recorded short videos that will explain what I'm going to show you here. If you forget anything or you want to even go deeper than what we're showing you, you can find really good tutorials under here. This tutorials tab is, I think, too short for people to really follow. So I would suggest if you want more training to go to the training tile. The only tile that you really will use with your student is this courses tile in the upper right-hand corner. So let's log into that, and you'll see that there are 5 different courses: a student orientation, general English, civics, careers, and grammar. We suggest that you start with the general English. This is the most robust lessons in Burlington. Within these other ones, they're specific. So if you're working with a student and they're preparing for the citizenship exam, then we would tell you to switch over and start using the EL Civics. But for 90% of our students, you can meet their needs under the General English tab. Once you're in there, there are 6 different levels that correspond with the level that our student has placed at when they took their CASAS pretest. What's very common when you get a student profile, it'll tell you what their CASAS level is in reading and in listening. What's pretty common is that the reading might be a higher level than the listening. Like you might have high intermediate reading, low intermediate listening. Always choose the lowest level to start with because it's easier to be in a situation where your student feels really good, like this is too easy for me, move me up, than to have a student who's feeling overwhelmed and frustrated and have to say, okay, we've got to go backwards. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So the name of the level is here, kind of in tiny print in the bottom corner. So I'm going to open up High Beginners. The first tab here at the top is actually a lesson plan for you that has been written out. So the very first lesson in this unit is about achieving goals. And you can open up the lesson plan and preview this. So just as we on Saturday kind of developed a lesson plan for hypothetical student, they have created a lesson plan for you. And it'll provide a summary of what this lesson is about. It'll tell you that to do the whole lesson, they estimate how much time it'll take. And I have found this to be pretty true to my experiences as a tutor, that it would be about 90 minutes. So if you have a 2-hour lesson with a student, you've got time to do kind of that catching up with each other at the beginning and winding up at the end, and putting this in kind of the middle of that 2-hour window. The expansion worksheet, which I'll show you, is an additional 30 minutes, and there's going to suggest yet another activity you could do to add another 30 minutes on. It's good to look at these. You may never use them, but they're there for you. So it goes over all of the components of the lesson and explains to you what the objective is for each lesson. Here's the optional expansion worksheet. It'll tell you what the worksheet is going to be about. This one says interview 3 classmates and complete a chart. So I have found that a lot of these worksheets are designed for a classroom with multiple students like this one is. You can either tailor it to work in a one-on-one situation or, just not bother with it. It's your choice. And then they'll suggest an additional activity. I always have these in my back pocket in case a lesson goes really quickly. It's something that you can add on to use, fill up the rest of your time. So that's your lesson plan. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to use, hopefully you guys can see this depending on where your little video images are. I'm going over to the right-hand side of my screen where there's three buttons, three dots on top of each other. This is a toggle switch. Do you guys see that? And I'm going to switch over to the in-class lessons. So the lesson plan that we were looking at was actually for the very first lesson in this whole high beginner course. There are 10 themes, if you will, and within each theme, there will be 8 lessons. So you can see that there's at least a year's worth of lesson material here for you. It is rare when a tutor tells us that they've gotten through everything in 1 year. So within the theme of personal information, you would open up the first lesson and you start at number 1. And as I said on Saturday, what Burlington English calls get ready is really kind of their warm up. It's like, well, this is what we're going to be working on. Usually there is some kind of image that you can start a discussion around. Who do you think these people are? What do you think they're doing? I would ask if they know what this target is and how that might relate to the lesson. There is another kind of warm-up activity that is more targeted towards the lesson that you can do together. And then it starts moving through the lesson. And here it's going to start with vocabulary that is going to be used throughout the lesson. So in this case, this is something I've done with my student already. So let me reset this so you can see how it works. Wherever there is a box with a white arrow, green and white, that means there's an audio file to listen to. So I'm going to play it.
Samantha's English isn't very good. She wants to improve her English.
So the idea here is listen and then match the first sentence to the second sentence by dragging the number over. Of course, you could just have your student say, that was B. You know, they don't have to do the drag and drop. Just depends on you and your student, how you want to do that. So my experience is that the vocabulary in Burlington often is just 1 or 2 activities. That's why we on Saturday spent some time talking about other things you can do with vocabulary, like having your student write down some sentences in a journal for new terms or phrases. Using that one, you might want to create a fill in the blank worksheet with this vocabulary. I have found that students usually, unless they know all of these words, they usually need some more practice with it for them to learn it than just this one vocabulary exercise. Anyway, you just keep clicking across the top with the learner and doing the activity with them. So sometimes it'll be you'll be typing in something. Sometimes you'll be dragging and dropping. Down at the bottom, there's a check button and you can check your answer. If you as the tutor aren't sure, you probably will know what the right answer is. But you can always ask the software to tell you too. And again, here is a red button with a white arrow. So there's another audio file to listen to and then answer some questions about. And you just keep working your way across the top, completing these with your student. And there will be times when they will get the wrong answer and you'll need to explain why the correct answer is correct. So there's opportunity for you to jump in here. In this case, this is a conversation to practice role playing with your learner. And then it says, use your own goals to make this conversation true for your learner. So your learner may not want to be an auto mechanic, but maybe they want to work in a bakery. So they can use this sentence structure, but make it true for themselves. And these are really good conversation skills, right? That you can emphasize here. We use these stock phrases over here in this gold box all the time when we're talking to people to keep a conversation moving. Oh, that's interesting, it's exciting. That sounds interesting. Tell me more. So those are good phrases for students to learn and to use. As I mentioned on Saturday, every lesson ends with a review game. This is so there's like 3 different kinds of games that Burlington uses. This is a Connect 4 game. Did you guys ever play that as a child or with children? Okay. The idea is that there would be 2 people competing against each other. I have never competed with my student. I just let them play both parts of this game. It's going to ask them a review question. What can you say when a classmate tells you about her goals? Well, that would be the correct answer. And if it's correct, you would continue and she gets a ball dropped. So the idea would be to build 4 in a row, diagonal, or whatever. But I have never emphasized the winning aspect so much as the review, but just the game format. Both of the students that I've tutored with Burlington English have really loved it. So as I said, it's kind of a light way to end the session, and it gives you some feedback on what your student has learned. Any questions about the in-class lesson, which is designed for you to do in conjunction with your learner? Hi, Charlie. Thanks for joining us. I know you joined after I got going here. So feel free to weigh in if you have any questions. So that is...
Lori, I have a question.
Sure, Nikki.
Was there a way to track that you completed each of those steps or any type of progress
Well,
dashboard?
there is a way for you to track your students' homework progress, and I'm going to show that to you in just a minute.
Oh no, I mean like going through these lessons, like if we
no, you kind of
oh.
have to keep track of that.
Okay.
Like, what did I do last week?
Yeah. Okay.
So most tutors give students choices. I wouldn't recommend jumping from one theme to the next every week. So I would start by saying, of these different topics, health, safety, personal information, where do you want to start? And then, for example, my last student wanted to start with health, which wouldn't have been what I chose to start with, but that's fine. That was what was important to her. So we started there, and you can either work through the lessons in order or skip around. It doesn't really matter.
Okay. So we just keep track separately of like what lesson we're at kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we've looked at the in-class lesson. So I have kind of gone through the first 3 pages of your handout, and that's how to access what you're going to use during a tutoring session. I'm going to shift and show you the student lessons now, because when a student logs into their Burlington account, they're not going to see those in-class lessons that we just looked at. Those are only in the tutor account. But they are going to see a set of lessons that has the exact same titles as your in-class lessons. And the idea is that this serves as homework for the learner to do after you have done the in-class lesson. So it's a review of all the vocabulary. If it's a listening exercise, they're going to listen to the same audio, but but different questions. And there's a lot more vocabulary practice here than in the main lesson. So we'll just take a quick look at this so you can see what I mean about the vocabulary. In this case, they can listen to
Reporter.
it's said in English. They can click on this microphone and record themselves saying the word recorder. Oops. Reporter. Reporter. Okay. And it gives some feedback. Even I never get off 4 pies filled in here. So tell your student not to sweat too much about filling in all of that circle. It probably won't happen. And then if they click on the globe, they can get it translated into their first language. And so there's a chance to practice saying all those words. There's a lot more practice learning those words than they had in the first lesson with you. And again, they can, in order to get credit for this and for you to see their progress, they actually need to select the answers. And if they hit check down at the bottom, the software will auto-correct it for them, and it records it in the system for you to see. So you can assign this homework to your learner. You can just say, do the high beginners class, personal information, listen and speak, achieving goals, or you can use the messaging feature that is within Burlington English to send them the lesson. To do that within the system, what you want to do is copy the URL for the student lesson, which is going to be, and actually what you want to do is go back to the number 1, because you want them to start on the first page, not the last page. And copy the URL. And then go over next to your name. Do you guys see this envelope icon? You can send a new message to your learner because their account is linked to yours. So you might say homework for Friday. If you click on the paperclip icon, you can insert that URL. I'm gonna move you guys out of the way. Save it. And then you can send it to them, which I'm not going to do. I'm going to close that. But if you sent it to the learner, when they go into their account, and we show them how to use Burlington so they are familiar with this, they're going to see a red number 1 up here on their envelope icon, which means they have sent you a message. And they can message you back. Like here is a message from, well, that's a message I sent to my student. Did I get one from her? So here's one, my student, I finish. So just letting me know that she's done it. They don't have to message you back, but they do have that capability. This saves a little bit of confusion. If you send them the link you want them to use, sometimes students will by mistake go into the wrong level, or they might do the wrong lesson. It depends on the student. You know, some understand very clearly, some get confused or misunderstand. So using the messaging feature ensures that you get the results that you want.
I think you can do multiple links in the same message too, right?
Yeah. If you wanted to assign more than one lesson. Any questions about that, about the messaging feature?
I have a question. That um, I missed some of that. Part of my reason my camera's not on, I'm also going back and forth between a work meeting. But
It's okay.
so forgive me if you already covered this. We can send this module, for example, to our students if, say, we didn't finish it in class.
They cannot
Or
finish the in-class lesson because only you have access to that,
okay,
but you could assign them the student lesson, even if
okay,
you didn't finish the whole in-class lesson. There's no reason why they can't do it on their own.
okay. And then another quick thing, you told us on Saturday that this going through each one of these lessons is about an hour and a half, and then with warm up and the cool down, that's about 2 hours. So then,
Total. Mm-hmm.
so then the first couple weeks of how our like interactions should look, if I'm understanding it, and please tell me where I get the timeline wrong, is first week get to know each other, don't really talk business. Second week, maybe open up. Should we bop around to like lesson 2, section 4, lesson 1, section 3, and just kind of click around, or should we start digging in week 2? What I'm worried about is my lesson planning, right? So should I have 6 weeks of lessons already in my mind? Um, what do
No.
I do for week 2? How do I plan for
Well,
that?
for week 2, so part of the suggested first lesson plan that we put in your pocket folder is to talk about your students' goals. So I usually from that conversation, you have a sense of what your student really wants to learn to use English to do, and maybe what is the most priority for them. For instance, the last student that I had, it was going to the grocery store. So within Burlington English, then I looked and found a lesson at her level about going to the grocery store. And I suggested then when we met the second week, why don't we start here since this is important to you? And you want the student to give you buy-in. They might say, no, I figured that out. It doesn't matter anymore. And like, okay. Then you can spend some time looking at the table of contents at their level and asking them, to choose where they'd like to start.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense.
Because they're adults, we want them to be involved in making decisions about what they're spending their time on. So you kind of make suggestions based on their direction.
Okay, gotcha. Thank
Okay.
you.
So that was the student lesson. I'm going to go back over to my toggle bar here and I'm going to go down to the progress button because this is what you can use to see your students' work. This is loading a little slower. Okay, so this is a student at a very high level. This student has spent 23 hours so far in the high beginner level working on homework on her own time and her own account. So this is in addition to meeting with her tutor. And she's averaging about 75%. That is really fine. Anything below 75%, I think, is a sign that you need to review with your learner. But we're not about perfection here. So if somebody, if your learner gets upset, oh my gosh, I only got 85%, say, hey, that's good enough for us. We're about being able to communicate, not necessarily perfect grammar every time. If you click on this completion button at the end, it'll continually drill down to give you more information. So this student spent 55 minutes doing that homework lesson that we were just looking at on achieving goals, and she got an 82%. If I clicked again on the circle, I can drill down and see not each question, but I can see each activity that she did, how much time she spent on it, and what her score was. to be honest with you, I don't normally drill down this far. If I see 85%, I usually am pretty satisfied with that. What I would do at the beginning of my tutoring session is pull this up. And if I've made an assignment, review it with my student and either commend, wow, you spent a lot of time on this lesson and you did really well. Was there anything you didn't understand that you want me to clarify? Sometimes a student may forget to do their homework. And so this is a gentle reminder to let them know that you're going to be checking to see if they're doing their homework. Like, oh, I had assigned this lesson. I saw you didn't do it. What happened this past week? Maybe there's a legitimate reason. What I have found, and Amy, I don't know if this has been your experience, is that the grammar lessons often have the lower scores. And that is the case here that I see with this particular student. She's scoring 80, 90, 100%, but not in the grammar. So often the grammar takes more than one lesson if it's important to them to understand a particular grammar feature. And that's where the worksheets that they make available as that expansion worksheet are really helpful. The grammar worksheets in here are really good. In fact, I might assign the worksheet before I assigned the student lesson, just to make sure my student understands the grammar rule we're talking about. The only thing that is not in this progress tab is a writing assignment. So you'll see that the student got 100%, but only 5 minutes. That's because all she did was look at a model and maybe answer some questions. She didn't actually do the writing in the software that's graded. If the student submits a writing assignment, you're going to find that over here under My Portfolio. This is often tricky. This is something the software cannot autocorrect because it's written words. It's going to dump their essay into this area and you'll see it. And it'll be something, I don't see that this particular student has done that with any assignments, any writing assignments. But it would be something that you could read and then offer some feedback on. My students mostly just wrote longhand. And they either brought it to me or took a picture with their phone and texted it to me rather than type, in the boxes of the software. It's whatever, and however you and your student want to work together. But if they tell you I did it in Burlington and you can't find it, remember to look in the portfolio. So that's sort of like checking the student's progress. The student lessons is where they do the work. The progress is where you see how they've done. Let's take a quick look at the worksheets because these are so for reading, they always give you a worksheet that has a list of vocabulary. And somebody asked on Friday, like, should they have a list? This is something you can print off or they can print off, to take notes about vocabulary words if they want. I'm going to close this.
Are you in this is in the student's account that they can see all this or in the tutors, or how does that work?
This is just in the tutor account.
Okay. And then we just share it with them, like sending it in an email, or how do they?
You can
access to
download
the
it.
worksheet?
So
Okay.
let's look at the expansion sheet here. So these are fillable PDFs. So if you're tutoring virtually or in person with a tablet, you can just type in the blanks and save it. You can download it just like any other PDF and attach it to an email, or you could print it off. So the expansion is really just more practice around the same topic that your student had. Like I said, there are just that's just optional for you guys. Another thing that is optional, going back out to my toggle bar, are the module tests here. This is something that Burlington English just rolled out this year. So remember I said each module has 8 different lessons. If your student has done all 8 lessons with you, then you have the option to assign or do with your student, which is usually what I've done, the module test. And this is a kind of cumulative test of vocabulary, of information around a topic, as well as some grammar if they've been studying grammar. That kind of brings it together, and it's another checkpoint for you beyond that individual lesson to see how much has my student mastered or come away with after we've completed these 8 lessons. Again, optional, you don't have to do it. If you wanted to do it with your student, you would click on the view, and this would allow you to work through the lesson. If you wanted to assign it, you do that by clicking this button. And you have to choose the time. When are you going to release it? When do you want it to be due? So let's say you give your student a week to do this lesson, and they do it the next day. You aren't going to see the results until your due date has been reached. So this is something I wish they would change, because we've told Burlington English that tutors will call us and say, I can't see my students' module test scores, and they told me they've done it, and it's because they've got to wait till that due date passes. But if once the due date is passed, that module test will show up under the progress tab along with those daily homework student lessons. Okay, that kind of concludes my overview of what you need to know to get started. What questions do you guys have or comments? Does this seem overwhelming or seem like something you can use? Ali, you've had the experience of using this as a learner.
Yeah, but not as a. Sorry, I have a question here. Suppose if we need to know like student profile, then we go here to that lesson in that corner, and then from here, what we select, just a little confused, courses.
Courses, and then you
menu.
want to select general English.
Yeah, I know that. Like, suppose if I know their performance, then we come to menu here, the right, top right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if
And
we
what
give you
select?
your profile will have, it'll say the CASA score, and it'll tell you the reading level might be high beginners, listening might be low beginners. So you would start with low beginners, because you always want to start with the lowest level.
Sorry, the other thing, suppose you test the student, like when we have a profile, you like already maybe advice and that, like we start from this point.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Amy, you've onboarded the students with the software, right?
Yes.
So they should know how to get in and do their lessons and how to check their own progress. Some of them will get in and start doing it right away while they're waiting for a tutor. So you might find your learner already has some minutes recorded under their lesson, or they might not. All right, any other questions? Okie doke. I'm going to stop the recording.